Hi, everybody. Hope you can all see me and hear me. This is Larry Goldfarb from Santa Cruz. Whoa, there we go. And welcome to Why Teach NLP in the Feldenkrais training. Let's see if I can get a little better light. Whoa, way too much light. All right, here we go. Sorry, a little technical problem there. Welcome. So today, I'm going to talk about neurolinguistic programming. I'm going to tell you a little bit about my background learning NLP, and then I'm going to talk about how we're using NLP in the Feldenkrais training that we'll be running in Amsterdam, that we are running in Amsterdam. And then I will invite the NLP trainer who will be teaching in Amsterdam with me, and give you some idea of how we'll be integrating NLP and Feldenkrais together. So maybe to start, I think it would be good. We have some polls, and I would like to run the polls. So wonder if my assistant can set that up while I'm starting. So if you there we go. If you click on the polls tab, you'll see that we have 3 polls set up. And if you could take a few moments to take the polls, then we'd have some useful background information. There we go. So back in the late 1970s, I was studying transactional analysis in Western Massachusetts, and my TA trainer came back from the annual TA conference and was so excited about this new thing that he had just found out about called neuro-linguistic programming. NLP is it was started by 2 guys, actually down the road here in Santa Cruz, California. John Grinder, a linguist, and Richard Bandler, a therapist, and they got together and they were wondering about what made certain people particularly magical as therapists. What made them so effective? And they weren't interested about the kind of therapy that they practiced or their theory about it. They were interested in what in particular they did. Each of them did. And there were 3 people they studied. Fritz Perls, the founder of Gestalt therapy, Virginia Satir, one of the founding family therapists, and Milton Erickson, who was one of the people most responsible for making hypnotherapy a legitimate psychotherapeutic endeavor. So Richard and John were interested in how did these people have such a seemingly magical effect with the people that they worked with. And what they did is they modeled the words that they said and the ways that they behaved, and they applied Noam Chomsky's theory of transformational grammar to language, and they had some basic ideas about how the nervous system worked and how they could use the way the nervous system works in normally to help us understand how people communicate. So this is kind of my first introduction. They talked a little bit about one of the central, my trainer, and talked a little bit about like some basic NLP concepts. One of which was that as we, as human beings, experience things internally, we experience them in sensory-specific ways. In other words, how our sensory channels for the world, what we notice around us, are also the same channels in which we think, the same modalities. So in other words, we see what's going on outside the world and we make pictures in our head. We talk to other people, well, we definitely talk to ourselves. Well, I do. Don't tell anybody. But, you know, we talk to ourselves. We have voices, our voice, maybe other people's voices in our heads. Smell, taste, and feeling. I mean, for them, that initially was about the tactical sense, kind of the classic five senses, right? But we know as Feldenkrais teachers that all of the other important, I mean, for them it was visual, auditory, kinesthetic, gustatory, and olfactory. Kinesthetic, like we mean, you know, how we sense ourselves in motion, and proprioceptively how we feel from the inside out. What was interesting about NLP is that they noticed that like if someone, how someone was thinking had to do with the gestures they made. So if someone was talking to themselves, often they were pointing to their mouth or to their ears, just unconsciously. They also noticed that the way people's eyes moved told you something, or could tell you something, about how they were thinking, right? So there was the idea of representational systems, these modalities for how we compute internally, and how there are tells, how there are ways that we let people know that how we let people know what was going on, and I'm sorry, how we let people know from our nonverbal behavior what's going on internally. At that time, I found the book, The Structure of Magic, by Bandler and Grinder. And I remember I was studying at Amherst College and going back and forth on the bus, reading The Structure of Magic. And the Structure of Magic is about another kind of basic NLP model called the meta model. And that's based on Chomsky's ideas about language and how we can listen to what anybody says and get some sense of what's behind what they're saying in terms of their experience, what's their internal experience. So that was the beginning of my introduction to NLP. My next step was actually studying with Paul Carter and Steve Gilligan in San Francisco. I took a class in Ericksonian hypnosis with them, and that was incredible, right? I mean, that was my first introduction to the idea that we can talk to the unconscious, right? That the person's, you know, Erickson's notion of the unconscious is that it is a positive thing, that, you know, not like the kind of dark and messy Freudian unconscious, but for Erickson, the unconscious is always doing the best it can for the person in whatever situation, and no matter how crazy or stupid or wrong someone's behavior seems from the outside, Erickson's assumption was that people are doing the best they can for themselves with what they know at the moment. And then I moved to Santa Cruz and discovered I was in the hotbed of NLP. And I did a 28-day NLP training with Richard Bandler and John Grinder and Robert Doltz and David Gordon and Leslie Cameron Bandler and other people I can't remember at the moment. That was a long time ago. Almost 30 years ago? No, 20. Yeah, 30 years ago. It was more than 30 years ago. And And that was a great training. It was full days every day, and we learned the NLP skills in these very step-by-step fashions. And so there, one of the things excuse me, one of the things I really appreciated about NLP is I moved here to the United States when I was 5 years old. And I obviously knew there was a language difference, but I really wasn't too prepared for the cultural difference. Excuse me. So I remember being in the schoolyard, and the kids were playing football, and they, football. So they threw the football at me and stuck out my chest and got the pointy football right in there. And no one had explained that American football and football were different things. I was ill prepared. I remember having a fight in kindergarten with the girls in the classroom about how to set the knives and forks up, because my right way, their right way, just wasn't the same. With NLP, I got such an interesting introduction to how other people think and how other people make sense out of the world. And NLP had ways of helping me understand not what people were thinking, but how they were thinking. So for instance, NLP talked about representational system. It talked about, it gave me tools to understand how people were noticing and how they strung the things they were noticing together. It gave me questions to help me understand what things meant to someone else, right? Not to me, but to another person, and how they could be understanding something so differently. And there are tools in NLP about the strategies that people use in terms of how they put their sensory experiences together. So English, for instance, is a really difficult language because it doesn't make sense phonetically, right? The words through, bow, although, and tough are all spelled O-U-G-H. O-U-G-H has 4 different ways of sounding, right? So if you have a strategy where you say the words inside your head and you make a picture from the sounds and then you spell it, you'll not be a good speller. Good spellers, what good spellers do is that they say the word and then they make a picture. And then the picture is what determines. Well, so like if you make a picture in your head of the word through and you spell it T-H-R-U, right? What happens to the picture in your head? So if you're a visual speller, if you have a visual spelling strategy, if that step is about making a picture, what will happen is the picture will look wrong, right? The O-U-G-H will be red or something like that. It's if you have a sounding out strategy, no matter how many words you practice, you're going to be practicing the wrong way of doing it, the way that won't work. It doesn't make sense functionally, right? And so if somebody wants to get better at spelling, they need to learn a different way of spelling and not continue to spell in the same way they've been spelling wrong, or wrong in terms of not morally wrong, but just it doesn't work. So this approach is about how you do things, and NLP has incredible practical explanations. Meaning that not explanations, techniques. I mean, one of the most impressive things I think for many people about NLP back in the day is that somebody who had a phobia, for whom there was really no let's say, successful phobia cures. I mean, right now we know, statistically speaking, that successive desensitization is the best way for people to overcome a phobia. That means, like, this is what airlines use to help people deal with their fear of flying. First you watch a film and you see a plane flying far away and somebody talks about it, and then you have a model, and then you go into a simulation, and then you go into a plane, and then you eventually take a flight. But it's step by slow step, and in each step kind of learning to calm down and not have a phobic response. NLP literally in minutes could help people get over phobias. I mean, I remember someone in my training who was claustrophobic, who was afraid of being closed up, and working with them using the NLP phobia cure, and it was amazing. It was gone. Like, it was gone. It was somebody I knew, so it wasn't just gone for a few minutes. It was gone the next day, their phobia. I mean, they could go stand in their closet and close the door and be comfortable. They could never do that before. They could barely go in their closet with the door open. So NLP provides all these different ways of observing people, understanding them, and working with them. I did my NLP training kind of overlapping with my Feldenkrais training. I started NLP first. That's actually how I found out about the Feldenkrais training. I knew about Feldenkrais before, but I met I met Mia Segal's daughter, Leora. Leora is a person who told me about the Amherst training. If it wasn't for Leora, thank you, Leora. I've already said that to her. I'm going to be a Feldenkrais teacher, right? So I was studying NLP, and actually when I went to the Feldenkrais training, I was pretty young. I was 22 years old, and I thought, wow, what if I could do what Richard and John had done with Milton and Fritz and Virginia? What if I could make a model out of what Moshe was doing, right? Because they took the work that these incredible therapists had done. So was there an application to this in somatics? So can I make a model of Moshe's work? Because NLP is primarily that. It is a set of tools for modeling expertise in all different kinds of people, right? I mean, that's what it's become over the years, taking the way that Richard and John originally worked and then applying those ideas to working with experts in all kinds of fields. The short answer is no. I couldn't go to Amherst and model Moshe, and not because he was impossible to model, but because the task I set for myself was like the wrong task. So the Feldenkrais method is too complicated, too rich, too deep to put into one map. If you put everything into one map, right, street roads and bike paths and elevation and precipitation, all that stuff, the map becomes unreadable. So for the last 30 years, I've been working on, 30 plus years, I've been working on developing a compendium of maps, right? An atlas of maps like Spiffer and so forth for the Feldenkrais method. But that's not what I'm talking about today. What I'm talking about is, how NLP helps me as a teacher, because I could take those tools that I learned in NLP. So for instance, taking the idea of representational systems and the meta model to better understand how the students in my class are learning, and understand when they ask a question, what kind of information do they need? Where are they getting stuck? NLP helps in another way, in that there's the there's the meta model, which is a way of asking questions, and then there's what we call the Milton model, which is a way of understanding Milton Erickson's language and hypnosis, and using that in working with people. And that language is particularly appropriate in teaching ATM. I don't know if you know it now, but Mark Reese, the Feldenkrais trainer, was also involved in with Milton Erickson. Also had worked with Milton, and he wrote a great article comparing Ericksonian hypnotherapy and the Feldenkrais method, and talking about how they're similar, how the work that we do could be understood, whether it's an ATM lesson or an FI, how it could be understood as a kind of somatic trance, right? I mean, trance meaning just an altered state of consciousness. That's really useful, and it was really useful to understand how my language as a teacher influenced the student's experience, and how to make the experience for the student of doing an ATM richer, and how to understand what kinds of clues I could give different people, when to be vague, when not to be vague. So these are the things that I took from NLP and applied to being a better Feldenkrais teacher, just taking the skills directly across. I mean, over the years, in applying the modeling ideas, I've developed a lot of tools for Feldenkrais teachers for understanding our method from an explicit conceptual point of view. I'm not going to talk about that today, but I've also gotten an interesting. NLP training is best done, like our training, experientially, that you learn not from ideas but from doing it, and in that way NLP is an experiential teaching approach, right? Because it's all about the student's experience, and how the words I use, and the ways I touch people, and the experiences the experiences they have are all based in their sensations, right? And how I can work with them in terms of sensation, which is experience. So I think let's take a look at let me take a look at the polls. I'm just curious. Wow. So thank you. It looks like almost half of the people attending today are Feldenkrais teachers with more than 10 years experience. And about 10% of you are people in a training program. So thank you for taking your time to join me. Most of you have read about NLP. Some of you have trained in it, and a little bit less. 11% of people have trained in it, and 11.5% and 8.5% have use NLP. Okay, in your practice. That's just really fascinating. Wow, thank you. It's interesting to see. I was interested about the positive, negative, or neutral, because I think NLP. What I loved about NLP is its effectiveness and its rigor and its clarity. What I found challenging in NLP was how it was presented. There was a lot of hype back in the day. And also what I thought is, like in some ways, somebody told me once, I can't remember who it was, that, NLP people had the technique and not the attitude, and Feldenkrais teachers had the attitude and not the technique. Not really sure if that's the best way of saying it, but there was something really interesting. I am just looking through the names of everybody who's who signed up. Thank you. Wow. Okay, I got to do one shout out here. So when I started my Feldenkrais training, I had done one Feldenkrais, one ATM in my TA Gestalt training back in 1978. We won't say how long ago that was, right? And then I found, I mean, I did a little bits of Feldenkrais type things from other people. I read about Feldenkrais, but like when I went to the training, that was the basis of my experience. And one of the other people here in town at Santa Cruz who was in the training was driving up to San Francisco to do an ATM class. And so my first experience, my first real ATM teacher was Norma Leistico. Hello, Norma. Thank you for joining us. I'm honored, pleased to see you here. Okay. A little choked up too. Anyway. I'm going to ask Nikki to join me in a few minutes. So I met, Nicole. I'm going to ask Nicole Schneider, world famous NLP trainer, to join me. And I'm going to ask her to start by telling you a little bit about how we met and how we decided to work together. So let me, let me click the right mouse and see if we can get her online here. I think I did the right thing. There we go.
Hey, Nicole.
Hi, Larry. How you doing?
Doing pretty good. Doing pretty good.
Cool. So Nicole is joining us from Amsterdam. She's all bundled up. It must be cold there. Good evening. Oh, and I'm drinking out of my Amsterdam cup, the 3 X's, which has nothing to do, by the way, with pornography. It's the history of Amsterdam. Oh, so I thought maybe you could tell us a little bit about, tell the folks here a little bit about how we met.
Okay, so before I met Larry, I saw a Feldenkrais teacher for FIs in California, and he suggested that I should go take a look at Larry during a couple of days of ATMs in Amsterdam. And so I had planned to not announce myself as an NLP trainer, to just enjoy the sessions, and I went there. And the cool thing is I'm not quite sure how Larry somehow figured out that I was an NLP trainer. It was maybe in a question that I asked a certain way, or he just felt I was interesting. But the nice thing was about that that workshop is that I could hear NLP behind what Larry was doing, both in the way that he would tell stories, as well as answer our questions, but also in the ATMs itself. I could hear the language patterns, the thought process behind NLP. And so when the break was there, Larry ran down to find out who I was, and we started talking, and we became friends. And so that's how we met. Now, since then, I've also had the opportunity to watch Larry work during the teacher training here in Amsterdam, the 4th installment of the training, and also in the way that he teaches, you know, the experiential way of teaching in Feldenkrais. I really noticed the overlap. And so to me, my conclusion is that NLP and Feldenkrais are pretty much on the same, in the same spectrum, but opposites of each other, and meet each other in the middle. And I am now becoming a student of Larry's as well right now in the teacher training, because I have a sense that NLP is not complete without Feldenkrais. And I have a sense that also Feldenkrais is not complete without NLP.
So I think one of the reasons that I'm incorporating, so over the years of running trainings, I think this is my 10th training now, and I tend to generally do one at a time because it takes a lot. What I think I've gotten better. I think trainings have gotten better at preparing teachers to understand the method, and I've been working a lot with the balance between the cognitive and the experiential in my training. But I think there are things that we don't talk about in the basic, basic Feldenkrais training. I'm going to get them all mixed up. That are really important, and we don't teach. And one is how to speak with people, how to listen to what's going on with them, how to understand their language, how to enter their world, how to talk to people who aren't our students about becoming our students. I mean, as much as there is methodology and technique in the language of touch, there's the same thing for words, and I think NLP provides that, right? I think that's what's important about NLP, and so many people who come to Feldenkrais trainings are not language oriented, right? They are sense oriented, and I think that's great. But I think the things that you aren't good at are what you need to learn in a training, so that when you're out in the world, you will be better at those things. And so I think that's one of the things that NLP has to provide. So our aim in working together is to, it's not like dumping an NLP training on top of a Feldenkrais training and saying kind of have good luck, but we're working on how we can teach NLP kind of, the word I think of is seamlessly, right? So that so that there is no, there's no bump between. It's not like we're going to switch back and forth. This is NLP, this is Feldenkrais. It's going to fit together. So, like, for instance, one of the basic things you learn in NLP is how to be in rapport with someone else, how to talk to someone in such a way that they and you feel connected to each other, and in a genuine sense. And there are you could say the somatic or nonverbal equivalents of that, right? Which would be like how to enter someone's pace, the rhythm at which, obviously I'm talking a little fast. So, if I wanted to speak with someone who's talking much slower, I'm going to adjust my rhythm to that. If I'm going to put my hands on someone, I want to connect to their sense of breathing, to their rhythm of breathing. So how do I follow their breathing? And the idea here is not just following, but then beginning to suggest, to lead them in a different direction, right? And we do that all the time when we do effort substitution, when we meet the tonus that someone is creating in such a way that they can begin to decrease it, right? That would be pacing and leading in a somatic way. And so we are going to we're gonna as we teach, we're gonna weave the techniques in to the training, and we're also going to make the link from the nonverbal, in a way, unconscious way that we work to the more verbal and conscious way that you interact with people in everyday life. So the skills are going to be developed, I mean, you could say kind of on both levels, and we'll go back and forth between them. And you also learn some NLP techniques that wouldn't otherwise be part of a Feldenkrais training, which I think will help people be more effective, in particular in helping change last. Because, in the United States, for those of you who don't live here, we have this television commercial series about Los Angeles. You may have heard of that place, otherwise known as Sin City. And it says, you know, what happens in Las Vegas. I just pissed off 2 groups of people in one swell food. That was very efficient. In Las Vegas, also known as Sin City. Sorry, those people down south. And the commercials say what happens in Las Vegas stays in Las Vegas, right? That's what happens in a trance. What happens in a trance stays in a trance unless there's some way to connect it to everyday life, right? In hypnosis, we call that post-hypnotic suggestion. In NLP, we call that future pacing, right? But we're going to talk about how you help somebody take what happened on the floor or on the table into their everyday life so they don't leave the learning behind, right? So that's a way in which what happens in NLP can help us be better teachers. I mean, I think that's one of the things that's made a huge difference in how I teach the method. You know, it's not just what happens in the lesson, it's how can somebody find that later. It's how sticky is the lesson. Anyways, maybe you want to say something, Nikki. I'm prattling you on.
Also, we're wondering why we get to talk. I'm sitting here smiling like an idiot at the camera. Yeah, I'm very excited because one of the challenging thing with NLP is much like Feldenkrais, it's really hard to explain what it is. And the reason why is the best way to kind of look at NLP is that through a series of modeling projects, there's 2 language patterns, as Larry said, and a whole bunch of techniques that both play with both conscious as well as unconscious level. And so it's inherently a giant toolbox. And then the way that I usually teach it in my profession is I predominantly teach coaches and motivational speakers and educators, and you know, sometimes the odd business person. And the exciting thing is that this toolbox is incredibly useful to apply in different modality. And the thing that both Feldenkrais as well as NLP have in common, which is the spectrum that I talked about earlier, is that they are about awareness and teaching the brain how to kind of reconnect neural pathways in different ways in order to gain more options. And the different tools of NLP sort of combine, and you can mix and match and create a whole nice new meal with it. And I think it's exciting for a Feldenkrais teacher to not just master the 2 language patterns, but also being able to work with the modalities of NLP, the other tools of NLP, and integrate the work. I see someone asking what my business actually is. My company is called What?
I just answered it.
Oh, you just answered it? Oh, great. Then I don't have to. And so the exciting pieces in the next years in Larry's training, we'll be able to inherently take NLP apart in tiny bite-sized pieces, and sort of place it inside the curriculum in a way that I'm almost able to secretly teach it, where the plan is that Larry will, for instance, be explaining something and just does his normal thing. And then I would come in, well, look, this is the language pattern that he just used, or the tool that he just used. So we can actually sort of meet everybody in that place where NLP and Feldenkrais overlap, and especially in Larry's work, is that we can then segue from there into what that means in terms of the NLP technique. I think it's also an opportunity for someone who's becoming a Feldenkrais teacher, that if there is ever a client that is dealing with a presenting problem, like one of them that Larry mentioned is a phobia or anxiety or something like that, gives the opportunity to have a whole new tool extra inside the toolbox other than Feldenkrais.
And also, I mean, since we're teaching it somatically, I think it's well within the kind of the purview of being a Feldenkrais teacher, How do you work with these things from a Feldenkrais perspective? And I should add, Nikki's going to be there also when I'm not teaching, and she'll be working with the other trainers as well, and we'll be weaving the NLP stuff in as we go, which is kind of cool too, because an NLP training can, be anywhere from, I don't know, maybe 10 or 12 days now to 28 days. But I mean, we have 160 days in the training. And so we really get to do this in a gradated way, in an integrated way, in small bite-sized pieces, in a Feldenkraisian way. And also, if you're already a Feldenkrais teacher, you can work with Nikki. She has training programs, and we're going to put the offers up and the information up for that. We can do that now, maybe, while I'm talking. We'll see if that happens. Jeffrey, if you can do that, that'd be great. And you can see what we have to offer. One of the things that we that we offer is also for people who are experienced practitioners. Is a way to participate in the training. I think most people would love to do their training again, right? I mean, what could be better than lying on the floor, rolling around for hours? But it's just not practical. So we have the associates program, which means that you can come for 2 weeks out of the year. You get the recordings for the entire year of the training, and there's an online group that meets regularly where you get the homework assignments that the trainees get, and we talk about the assignments and the training from an advanced perspective, like how does what's going on in the training relate to developing your practice. And you also have some individual time meeting with me where we can work on applying what you're learning to your practice. So we have the training, we have the associates program. Nikki has her training available as well. You want to say a little bit about what you're doing in training? Because I think one of the things that's great about what Nikki's doing is she has a very special, socially responsible way of doing NLP training.
Yeah. So I teach NLP all over the world, and one of the locations where I teach is on the island of Bali. And my mother is originally from Indonesia as well. And so in going back to the country where she was from, I wanted to do something back. And on the island of Bali, there is a school of mentally disabled children. And over there, the island of Bali is Hindu. And so they hide these children there out of shame, because it's sort of like bad karma. And so I wanted to support the school. And so what I do is I donate small workshops for like 3 hours, and I would go into an organization or a corporation, and I teach NLP there for 3 hours against donation. I also do trainings that are based on social entrepreneurship, where I teach small business owners how to use social entrepreneurship to actually benefit their marketing, because using social entrepreneurship as a business model allows for more visibility, and with that more clients, and you're able to do something amazing for a great cause. And so I kind of made it my mission to teach as many small business owners around the world how to do social entrepreneurship, and at the same time raising the awareness and donations myself. And it's really fun, because I also get invited for projects that involve underprivileged children or their teachers. And so I do a lot of smaller projects teaching NLP. So yeah, sometimes NLP has a little bit of a bad name. And I do think that there are some practitioners of NLP kind of like not very good news. But the way to look at NLP is, and I'm not sure if that's a little bit where it's maybe a little bit different from Feldenkrais, is NLP is also a tool for communication, verbal as well as nonverbal. And that means that if you put NLP in the hands of someone who's good and wants to lead a life of meaning and make the world a better place, you have one result. And when you put NLP in the hands of someone who just wants to sell no matter what, you have another result. And so that's sort of why NLP sometimes can get a bad name. But the exciting piece is that teaching NLP inside a Feldenkrais training, the propulsion then becomes the intent of the Feldenkrais teacher and how they can facilitate their clients in using NLP for the benefits and the results that they'd like to achieve.
Cool. I just turned the offers on. So if you look on your screen there, it has questions, polls, and offers, and there you'll find information about the Amsterdam teacher training. It started in November. We have a makeup starting actually on Saturday, this coming Saturday, and then the segment starts the Thursday thereafter. People can still join the training. We have a live makeup happening now. We'll have a online makeup happening between now and August, so you can join until August. There's also information, and by the way, if you're interested, if you you can get a Become a Better Teacher account on the website, which gives you access to the whole first week of one of the training programs, Amsterdam 3, I believe, all of the audio recordings. And I know a few people were interested in finding out what my ATM teaching style is like. There's a bunch of ATMs there, a week's worth. Our approach to trainings is a little bit different in that we don't start with the way Moshe started in Amherst. It's not sucking, it's kind of Moshe's greatest hits ATM. So there are a lot of ATMs there that you can get for free. There's also information about the associates program for people who are practitioners, teachers. And there's information about Nicole's, I keep doing that. Sorry, about Nicole's programs, about Nikki's programs. And you can find all that information there. I'm just going to take a look and see if there are questions I haven't heard. Nope, I think my assistant's been helping out. So just looking at what Margot wrote. Yeah, so Margot, I'm just reading your question. This is all interesting. I know my practitioner training provided refined communications by modeling, and the instruction was tacit. What can you say to convince me that NLP will give you new info? I don't know, you want to tackle that one, Nicole? I mean, what I would say is that the tacit learning is important, but explicit learning is also important. You know, NLP, you learn the skills and you learn what you're learning as it, I mean, I'm trying to think of, you know, when I am, look, I don't think tacit learning is enough, right? About the Feldenkrais method or about communication, because if you don't have a way to reflect on and think about what you're doing, Nicole, I'm gonna shut your screen off and say goodbye, okay? Since I'm just mumbling away. Well, maybe I can. Okay. It's not letting me do that.
Let me see if I can do anything.
It's here, but it just won't let me do it. Anyway, can you just put your mic off, because it's making a lot of crackling sound. So if you can mute yourself, that'd be great for the moment. Or freeze yourself. There you go. Anyway, I think what NLP does is it gives you a way of explicitly practicing all of these different language patterns. The challenge is our habit, right? The challenge is that when we, what we do when we're talking to people is what is unconscious. And so unless you learn new skills, unless you become, but I think our method is about awareness, right? So unless it's explicit, how can you be aware of what you're doing and how can you get better at it? And so I think tacit training, nonverbal, implicit, all of that is important. But I think the explicit, didactic, and cognitive part is important. I think getting feedback from other people about what you're doing well and what you're not doing well and how to improve it, I think that matters. In teaching ATM and the language that you use and in working with FI, because otherwise you end up just teaching the way that you've learned to teach, right? And the thing is, different people learn in different ways, and unless we have some sense about how we are teaching that, how do we teach different people, right? How do we teach someone who learns in a different way than ourselves? I think that's where the explicit part is really important. Not that the goal is to end up with a new radio station in your head and that you're chattering with yourself about it, but that you develop a wider range of options about how to respond to people and greater awareness of what's going on with your students so that your teaching can better match them. Okay. Let's see. Yeah, The Structure of Magic, Christine, is a great book to start with. All right, I think I'm gonna stop there. Don't see any questions in the question box. So I hope I've given you a little bit of a flavor of what I'm talking about. I think if you, there's one other way. If you get an account on the website, which is free, by the way, a teacher account also gives you access to the first and now the second year of the entire second Strasbourg Feldenkrais teacher training, all of the ATM transcripts. And there you will also see, you'll have transcripts of me teaching ATMs and actually lots of other people, Elizabeth Berenger, the co-director, and Paul Newton, who's now a trainer, and can't think of everybody offhand, but there's lots of ATM transcripts there too. So you'll see that there's some materials that you can take a look at and read ATMs. Also, somebody wrote me the other day, asked me where to find some baby roll ATM transcripts, and I said they're available right there on the website. So there's another resource. And by the way, one more thing, the lesson locator is on the website. The lesson locator is the is a search engine for Moshe's Alexander Unai lessons. You can search by text, so you can put any word or set of words in there, and it will show you every ATM lesson in which that particular text is found in. It's very useful. All of that is free. So thank you, Norma, about the lesson locator. Oh yeah, and Nicole just posted a blog that she wrote about Feldenkrais and NLP, which is really awesome, awesomely awesome. It's informative. I think it'll give you a little more detail about what we've been talking about. Anyways, having this kind of medium broadcast here with a webinar means we can't have a conversation, but I'm kind of wishing at the moment that we had a way to talk about all of these things back and forth. And maybe I'll set something up for that. So if you are interested in having a conversation, we could set up a Zoom meeting and we could do more live question and answer back and forth. Can't do that on this platform, but I want to thank you for taking some time out of your Sunday morning or afternoon or evening, or some of you it's the middle of the night, wherever you are, to join us. Sorry for a little glitch at the beginning there, but I hope I answered some questions. I hope I got you interested in this. One person wrote a very strong, kind email about like why we don't need NLP to teach Feldenkrais. And I can't tell you what you need, or what anybody needs, but I think NLP has made me a better Feldenkrais teacher. I think it has made me a much better listener. And in listening to other people and understanding where they come from, it's also made me a much kinder teacher. And I think that's really important in the work. So I hope you found this interesting, worthwhile, and I look forward to hearing from you. Please send me your comments or questions. I will respond to all of them as soon as I recover from this. All right. Thank you very much. And oh, wow. Wherever you are. All right. Take care and bye-bye.